This is the European History Lecture for Tuesday, the 12th of October, 2021, the day after Columbus Day, when we celebrate the European discovery of America. Now, America had been discovered by people. 10,000 years ago or so, Asians from Mongolia walked across the Siberian land bridge and became the first Americans. The Vikings discovered America in the Vinland colonies 1,000 years ago. But neither of those two events changed the history of Eurasia. Obviously, the people inhabiting the Americas had their own history, and the Vikings did establish their Vinland colony. Make sure you have your note packet out, too. But the wild ravings of drunken Norwegians and Swedes did not make much of an impression upon European civilization. In fact, a couple of months before Columbus discovered America, a Portuguese navigator called Lavrador discovered the coast that is eponymous with his name in eastern Canada, the Labrador coast. But he got back after Columbus, so it didn't count. I celebrate Columbus's vision in convincing the Queen of Spain to spend some of her blow money on an expedition to discover Asia by sailing west. He'd been trying for years, and it was a triumph of individual vision and will that he finally found a patron who was able to provide him with 3 old ships and 3 crews that nobody wanted to ever see again. They sailed over the horizon, and Columbus even faced a mutiny before, in October of 1492, somebody sighted land. The reason he faced a mutiny is because while educated people knew the world was round, sailors were not the most educated of people in those days. And they were convinced that Columbus was sailing them off the edge of the world or into a land of sea monsters a la Subnautica. And it was scary because the voyage takes over a month. They were sailing farther west than anyone, as far as they knew, had sailed. And when they arrived, Columbus found many of the things that he expected to find: tropical islands filled with brown people and exotic plants and animals. So he brought them back, and at Cadiz in Spain, he became a celebrity. We'll be talking more about Columbus when we get to that point. But I think it is worth remembering that Columbus is not personally responsible for everything that happened as a result of his discovery. He is responsible for discovering the Americas for Europe. Nor did he intentionally bring diseases that wiped out about half the population of 2 continents. He didn't know about diseases. No one did at his time. For modern woke liberals who want to flagellate themselves and hate Western civilization, to blame Columbus for genocide is nonsensical, and it cheapens the term genocide. Genocide is the intentional murder of an entire race of people. China's doing it now with the Uyghur Muslims of Xinjiang province. Hitler did it with the Jews. Others have done it at various times between those 2 occasions. In fact, genocide has to be intentional. Neither Columbus nor any of the conquistadors or explorers that followed him understood disease the way we do. It was not biological warfare. Finally, what is the alternative that our woke brethren would have? A world where, for reasons unknowable, 2 continents are left filled with primitives. Primitives, I'm talking technology level. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm saying that the average technology of people in North America was New Stone Age or Old Stone Age. We're talking hunter-gatherers with a bit of farming. That's 10,000 or more years behind Eurasia. The most advanced people in the Americas were the Aztecs and the Incas at point of contact, and they were about the technology of ancient Babylon. building stone megaliths that charted the skies and working with experimental theoretical mathematics. That's what? 2,500 or more years behind Eurasia? Behind Europe? Do you honestly believe that those people who were so far behind stood a chance? Do you honestly believe that those people lived in paradise? Without war, without slavery, without attempts to wipe each other out. Look at the history of how the Lakota people, who we call the Sioux, because their enemies call them Sioux, and the word Sioux means enemy, took the Black Hills from their enemies just a little while before American conquest. The natives, North and South America, were as human as you or me, with all that wonderful humanity and all that horrible humanity within them. And to look at the European conquest of America as anything other than what it was, a natural historical process, is to really take things out of context in order to make political points. In fact, had Asia contacted the Americas, it's incredibly likely that the Americas would have been conquered by them. Had the Americas had the technology, had the Iroquois been able to cross the ocean in ships and contact a primitive Europe, they would have made colonies. Why? It's because that's what people do. You cannot have an equal relationship between people at such different levels. It's impossible. One is going to end up serving the other or being defeated by the other. That will happen. That's one of the reasons why I want to go into space. Because I believe, A, there are creatures out there, and B, I would rather meet them in space with our own spaceships than meet them on this world without spaceships. Because if we encounter intelligent life in the universe that's capable of crossing gulfs of interstellar space while we're still bound to one single planet, we will be the primitives. H.G. Wells wrote about it in War of the Worlds. I don't want to be that. No one would. So much is connected to that day. So yeah, I wasn't here yesterday. It was Columbus Day. I celebrated it. I still do. Thoughts, questions, comments, other points of view? Haley.
This is a little bit different, but Frontier Airlines has just mandated vaccines, and so now most of the Frontier workers have gone on strike.
Good.
And 1,500 flights were canceled on one day because people don't want to get vaccinated.
Either we're a free country or we're not. It's as simple as that. Either we are an authoritarian regime or we're not. That's how I see it. So, yes, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I actually just had a question about corrections.
Yeah.
So for the ones on the map,
You just put a statement of relative location. What that means is France is west of the Holy Roman Empire, or Spain is south of the Holy Roman Empire, that sort of thing. Okay? Yeah.
Speaking about what Taylor said, there's 12,000 federal air traffic controllers, only 6,000 of them vaccinated, and the federal mandate for federal employees to get vaccinated or get fired is coming up.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The post office is not subject to that because the post office is a voting bloc President Biden wants. The Congress is exception, just as the Congress was accepted during Obamacare. You can look at who is made an exception of when government policy is supposed to affect everyone. And you will see the donors and the truly valuable constituents made exceptions. If you're going to do something like this, do it to everyone or do it to no one. The fact that they have exceptions at all indicates that they understand that what they're asking is morally bankrupt. My saying, not theirs. Other thoughts? I have had Native Americans in this class, members of the Coeur d'Alene and other tribes, and back east, members of the Abenaki, hear what I've had to say, and they've offered very, very, very intense different opinions. So, I see nobody offering that opinion. in effect, even though there was not intent, the tribes that existed here, the nations that existed here before European conquest, are forever changed, maybe even destroyed. That is a loss. That is a shame. But I honestly don't know how it would have been avoided. Certainly, no, I just don't. I'll leave it at that, since nobody else wishes to offer. Where we were was discussing St. Thomas More's refusal to go along with the right of supremacy, asserting the royal control over the church in England, and also the divorce and remarriage of King Henry VIII. Again, we have an issue of conscience. Should someone in good conscience be forced to do something by their government? I would say yes, there are cases, but those cases are very bloody rare. And if you are going to force people to do things, you'd better make sure that you force everyone, and that you have a good reason, and that you also have a good secret police to enforce it. Thomas More refused to go along with the Protestantization of the English Church, and he gave his life for that. He is a martyr and a saint in the Roman Catholic faith. Yes?
We didn't finish the video. We had like 2 minutes left in the last one.
What did he do?
He refused to consent to the Protestantification, how's that, of the church in England. That's true. What I'm going to do then is pause this video, and we'll see the rest of that. So, there we have seen the end of the scenes from The Man for All Seasons, or A Man for All Seasons, dealing with More. Now let's talk about some of the genuine problems that existed in the church and some characteristics of the late medieval and Renaissance churches that even the church comes to admit were problems during the Council of Trent. Later. Happens later. First off, you have in the clergy a tendency towards absenteeism. What that means is that since noble families only have so much land and don't want to divide that land into small parcels, the eldest son or sons tend to inherit everything. What do you do with the younger sons? Well, one of the things you do is you make them high officials in the church. They're not necessarily going to have children of their own, but they'll be well taken care of, and the family will now have influence on church policy. So you buy an office. You buy a bishopric or a cardinalship for your third son or second son or fourth son or fifth son or whatever, and that person becomes a priest and a bishop, or a priest and a bishop and a cardinal at the same time. But once you become a priest or a bishop or a cardinal, if your family lives, I don't know, in Frankfurt, and you become the Bishop of Mainz, does that mean that you have to then move to Mainz? Well, a lot of these people say, no, I'm not going to do that. So they are bishop or cardinal archbishop of a region where they don't live necessarily. These are clergy in absentia, or they are absentee clergy, which means they're not there to conduct their office. Their office is going to be conducted by the church bureaucracy, but they themselves are not going to be present to take responsibility. In other words, they've got the title of the job, they've got the perks of the job, they've got the status of the job, but they don't have the responsibilities of the job. They can't because they are not present in the place where they're supposed to be. Absenteeism is a problem. That would be like me being hired to be your teacher and me being out sick every day. I'd get the money, but I wouldn't have the job. There's an inherent problem there. And that's because the higher offices of the church are so political that people will buy offices. Remember, 3 cardinals are created to pay for the army. One cardinal is paid to make sure that Michelangelo can finish the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It's not that the church is wasting the money. It's that the church is so engaged in worldly affairs that it needs all that money. So those cardinals are not necessarily men of peace or men of deep faith. They're simply men with the right connections. So absenteeism is a problem. It's being given an office that you're not present to fulfill quickly.
Would it be like getting the rights without the responsibility?
That's right. That's good. That's a good way of saying it. Getting the rights without the responsibilities. The second is pluralism. And pluralism is an extension of absenteeism. What if our family gets even more status from having more offices? So I am not only Cardinal Bishop of Mainz, which is in Germany, but I also become the Bishop of Brandenburg, which is not near Mainz. Don't think. Or the Bishop of Hanover. Or of Hamburg, which is definitely not near Mainz. So now I'm bishop of 2 or 3 dioceses. Or what if it's a lesser thing? What if I am priest in 3 different churches at the same time? Or 5, or 10. It happened. People were given full-time jobs, multiple full-time jobs, so that their family could have even more influence and more status, because the church needed money, or needed those families' influence to protect the church in war, and to fund the church's art, and to fund the church's missionary activity. The problem is that a priest who is not present in his parish cannot fulfill the office of a pastor or a parish priest. Instead, the priest is stuck being absent. So pluralism necessarily leads to a form of absenteeism. Because even if the person wants to do everything they should, a person cannot be in multiple places at the same time. It's impossible. Unless you have Hermione's time turner. And even then, there are problems. So, in the end, the church's need for money leads to certain abuses of the clergy that are problems. And even the church recognizes this at the Council of Trent when they try to deal with these things and stop them. But the Council of Trent happens too late to stop the Reformation. It happens too late to stop the split of the church. The Council of Trent is closing the barn door after the livestock has escaped. Now, there are some other things that you need to understand have crept in and become part of usage that the church may or may not have since clarified or rejected or changed. One of them is this: a passion for relics. Now, when I was an altar boy, we were shown with reverence the place on the altar at St. Mary's Church in Meriden, Connecticut, where there was a stone that had been placed in over a relic. A relic typically is a body part, usually a piece of bone, of a saint, of a canonized saint. To my understanding, at least it was true in the 1970s when I was an altar boy, every Roman Catholic altar has a relic in it. So let me explain what a relic is. Imagine that my name is Athanasius. And as Athanasius, I am a person dedicated to good works. I help people who are sick and dying stay alive or die with some degree of love and dignity and hope for the afterlife. I encounter people who are poor and I give them food. I encounter people who are naked and I give them clothing. I encounter people who have no home and I give them shelter. Most of all, I give mercy to those people in this world who are downtrodden. I lead an exceptionally virtuous life. And several miracles seem to happen in my orbit. So when I die, somebody proposes to the Vatican that maybe I was a person specially touched by God, a saint. And there's a process by which the Roman Catholic Church determines if a person is a saint. I think they have to have 3 miracles, no less than 3 miracles connected to them in some way. These are unusual events that happen in the presence of the saint by God's grace. Somebody who had a terminal illness who was healed, that sort of thing. And if I am canonized a saint, can I go on helping people? Well, in Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic belief, and even frankly in Lutheran belief, to some extent, the answer is yes. In that a person can pray to God and pray for me to help pray alongside them to God. So if I am deeply in earnest about praying for something, and if I wish God to look upon my prayer more favorably than he otherwise might, I might ask for my patron saint, St. Jude, to pray alongside me. The Hail Mary prayer is a prayer for Mary, Mother of God, who is a saint, in the Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox Church and in many others, to pray along with the person to God. You're not praying to Mary as if she's God or St. Jude or any of that. You're praying for the saint in heaven to take an interest in your condition so that maybe God will take greater, will look more favorably upon what it is you're asking. That's an important, subtle difference, because many Protestants say, Catholics, they pray to saints as if they're God. No, that's not true. Catholics pray for saints to pray with them. So the Hail Mary prayer is, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. That's how I learned it. You may have learned a different version if you learned it at all. It's not a prayer to Mary as if she's some kind of feminine aspect of God. It's a prayer to God and for Mary to take an interest and pray alongside. But there's another way that saints might be useful to the salvation of souls in this world. What if holiness is like a perfume or a cologne? I wear Old Spice, so sometimes my clothing smells quite like Old Spice. My second girlfriend she loved autumn because of sweaters. It was sweater season. She got to wear sweaters. And it was one of her things. And what she would tell me is that what's odd is that at the beginning of sweater season, you take a sweater out that you haven't used since last fall, and it still smells like the perfume you were wearing that day. And I've noticed this with cologne. I take out a sweater I haven't worn in months, and it still smells a little bit like Old Spice. The fragrance of the cologne, or the perfume in her case, was something that suffused itself into the fabric. And it's going to be there for a while until it wears out or until it's washed away. What if holiness is like that? What if holiness suffuses the body? What if, in fact, the body part, the pinky bone of St. Athanasius, might still, by God's grace and by the faith of the believer, have the ability to heal? So if there is a shrine to St. Athanasius, which actually is a Greek saint in the Greek Orthodox Church, if there is a shrine to St. Athanasius, and that shrine contains the pinky bone of St. Athanasius, and you go to that shrine, you sacrifice time, you sacrifice money, you risk your life because of bandits, you go through horrible weather. Traveling in the Middle Ages is not like traveling and going to motels every night. You don't have places to stay often. And the places that are open to be stayed at are not nice. You go through all of that just to get to the shrine so you can make an offering into the collection plate and so that you can pray to God with the help of St. Athanasius. You kiss the pinky bone of St. Athanasius. God might look upon that effort as well as on the vestigial holiness left over in that pinky bone from St. Athanasius' well-lived life, and you might receive healing as a result of all that extra effort. Relics, in other words, are considered to be magical, the kind of magic that is holy or religious. So we have the veneration of relics. The word veneration, V-E-N-E-R-A-T-I-O-N. The word veneration, V-E-N-E-R-A. I'm going to toss this to you. Can you throw it away, please? Thanks. Okay. The veneration of relics, V-E-N-E-R-A-T-I-O-N, means an almost holy awe, A-W-E, towards the body parts and leftover bits of saints. If St. Athanasius always worked his miracles while wearing a certain prayer shawl, then the prayer shawl of St. Athanasius might be considered a holy relic. Now, the church was clear theologically about the place of relics, but it did not dissuade everyday people from thinking of the relics as magic. It did not clarify. And so, in popular belief, many people thought that the relics themselves had magical powers. This is going to be something that's going to become a problem to Luther. We've talked about the Imitation of Christ and St. Thomas à Kempis. What I will say about that now is simply it is a different way of looking at faith that has to do with individual piety, an individual focus on living a well-lived Christian life in your daily routine, in taking time out of your daily routine to pray and to meditate upon what would Jesus do. Ask daily. What would Jesus do? In my situation, I've got to go to work. I work with a crabby woman. She's constantly me, 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 me. How do I deal with this nag? Do I just look at her and say, shut up?
Yes.
Or do I try to reason with her? Or do I put wax in my ears like Odysseus when he was coming home and heard the siren song from the island? What do you do with annoying, irritating, difficult people in your daily routine? I know, because I'm an annoying, difficult person. And other people have had to deal with me over the years. It's not easy dealing with me. You know this. So, Thomas à Kempis's Imitation of Christ emphasizes a religiosity, a way of living your Christian life that has very little to do with the hierarchical formal church and much more to do with personally praying and meditating and asking for God's guidance. Lord, what would you have me do with this difficult woman? Would you have me be patient and just understand that her difficultness isn't because she's mean, it's because she's unhappy. Desperately, desperately unhappy. Because she has no friends. Because she's so difficult. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. See how that works?
Are you talking about somebody?
No, I'm talking about several people I've known over the years. Yep. Yep. And you've known people like that too, and if you haven't, you will. You will. Maybe you'll be one. Don't be one. It's not good.
I am one.
Now, the other thing that is going to become a spark to the Protestant Reformation is indulgences, the sale of indulgences. Let me explain what these are, where they come from. Allahu Akbar! God is great! In the Islamic faith, as you know, the jihadi who dies shaheed, the holy warrior who dies in a holy war, goes straight to a part of paradise designed to appeal to heterosexual young men from the desert. Whatever sins you may have committed in life are forgiven, and you go to the happy part of paradise, which is a garden of earthly delights. It's got fountains and sweetmeats and aromatic plants and fruit trees and 72 sex kittens given to you by God to live forever in paradise with these 72 virgins. Now, if your life isn't that good and you have an opportunity to die in a holy war, that's a good deal if you believe it. Which is why, aside from the Japanese, the most likely enemy to do a suicide attack against you is probably going to be Islamic, because there is an old tradition of this, of being willing to die right here, right now for the faith, in hopes of getting into that beautiful, happy part of paradise with the 72 virgins.
Wait, hold on.
Just raise your hand if you want to be called on.
I did.
I'm ignoring you. What?
I'm confused. What? So they think that, like, if they do good in life, they're gonna go to, like, this paradise? Like,
No, if they die in a holy war.
oh, okay.
It's more than doing good in life.
Okay.
It's a young man choosing to die right now to win a battle that he'll never see victory from. And God, according to Muhammad in the Quran, will reward him with this happy place of paradise, with his forgiveness of sins, and with the 72 virgins.
So they get to, like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they have sex in
and that's
paradise.
That's what that is?
They're not there for poetry.
How did...
This is just the way they do it. Don't ask me.
Had a dream.
Ask the angel Gabriel, who supposedly spoke to Muhammad through the words of God.
I think that was, like, don't they, like...
Because chastity is a Christian virtue. Chastity is uniquely Christian. The Jewish faith doesn't go deep into chastity. The Muslim faith does not go. They go into monogamy.
What's that?
Monogamy is one husband, one wife. You don't mess around.
That...
And you don't have sex before marriage in all three cases. But in Christianity, because it's appearing in the midst of the Roman Empire, an empire where the upper class built orgy rooms in their city and town homes, the idea of actually being chaste for the first time, of not having all the sex you could, for the first time was something that was connected to religion. And so Christianity brings this virtue or value of chastity, which is a new thing. And in this moment, Islam does not agree. It's just they have a different idea. So, how do we get from there to indulgences? I will explain. No, I need the time. So, Christians decide, after being on the receiving end of Islamic holy war for about 400 years, to engage in Christian holy war, the Crusades. From the late 1000s up about 200 years, most. So what reward are Crusaders going to get? Are they going to get 72 virgins? No, because Christians don't think that way. Christians are not going to have God giving you all the sex you could possibly want in heaven. It doesn't go with the harps and the angels flying around on clouds. It does not go with Christianity. That vision won't work. But you've got to do something for your Crusaders. So what you do is you say, time off from purgatory. There are three places in the afterlife that medieval Christians believe the soul can go. There's hell for the damned, the absence of God, being victimized by Satan, and evil forever, ever, ever. Oh, it's horrible. There's heaven, living in the presence of God, living in truth, taking joy from that. And that's for really, really, really good people. But medieval Christians believe in the third place, called purgatory. Purgatory is like the Department of Motor Vehicles of the afterlife. You arrive, and you get in line. You think it's the introductory line. You go, I just arrived here. What do I do now? And the woman behind the counter, it's a woman, says, you got your paperwork? What paperwork? Your paperwork. You got to go in that line to get the right paperwork. So you've just spent 1,000 years in line. Now you've got to go in line and spend 3,000 waiting for your paperwork. Then you get your paperwork, you fill it out, you go to the first line. You're now 7,000 years in Dutch, just waiting. And you get there, you filled it out wrong. You've got to start over. That's the Department of Motor Vehicles of the afterlife. Purgatory is designed to make you suffer, and that suffering will purge your sins from your soul. So you lied to your grandmama. Well, you're going to spend a few hundred years in purgatory for that. You didn't feed your dog, and you claimed you did. Don't do that, by the way. You're going to spend 500 years in purgatory for that. And because it's the afterlife, everything is extended in time. So people believe, actually it's a hopeful belief. You know why? Because a person who has good and evil deeds in their life has a second chance at heaven. You spend 50 or 70,000 years in purgatory, your sins shed from you like weights, and your soul ascends to heaven. It's a second chance. It's actually considered a happy thing. So what a crusader is going to be granted is 20,000 years from their time in purgatory, or 50,000 years if they die in battle. That's a good deal. Please wait. But what if you're old? What if you're weak? What if you're female? What if you can't put on armor and go fight? But you can pay for a guy to do that. So what the church began to do is allow people to crusade vicariously by paying for the shipping across the Mediterranean by the Venetians, or paying for the suit of armor, or paying for the weapons, or paying for the food and the upkeep, or paying for the knights hospitaliers who would care for the wounded. And in paying for them, the church gives you an indulgence. You spend gold for the crusades, and the church gives you an indulgence proportional to your contribution that says you get 20,000 years off of purgatory. You get 40,000 years off of your time in purgatory. You get to skip purgatory completely because you just sacrificed your entire family fortune for the sake of the crusade. This makes sense if you are engaged in holy war with the Muslims, who have their own version of, for the shaheed, for those who die martyrs in battle, they go to a special part of paradise. Crusader gets time off purgatory, gets to go to heaven more quickly. Now the person who buys the gear can go to heaven too. This is the selling of indulgences. Martin Luther is going to take issue with the relics, the veneration of relics, and the sale of indulgences. He's going to say that the veneration of relics is superstitious, and that the selling of indulgences conveys the impression that the church thinks you can buy your way into God's grace, which is not the case. And Catholic theologians would be the first to say, we don't say that. We're not saying you can buy your way into heaven. But Luther says, whatever your theologians say, in practice, what your church is doing, what my church is doing, what our church is doing, is allowing people to spend lots of money and giving them a piece of paper saying 20,000 years off purgatory. So, next time, we're going to begin the movie Luther. And we are going to deal with a Lutheran perspective on what caused the Protestant Reformation. If for whatever reason you do not wish to see this, just let me know and we'll work out an alternative assignment. But we're going to see Luther probably over the next few class days. Now, the last page of your notes has a handout. The very last page has a worksheet that you're going to fill out and turn in on Martin Luther as depicted in the film. If you don't see the movie, you're probably going to do as much of that as you can through research, and I may let you research somebody else. So, again, come talk to me if for whatever reason you don't want to see the film, or you shouldn't see the film. The rest of you are going to fill out that worksheet, and it's going to be due the class period after we finish the movie. So if we finish the movie on Friday, it'll be due Monday. If we finish the movie on Thursday, it'll be due Friday. Any questions? Bear in mind also, this coming Monday, you have chapter survey 15 due. So we're back on the treadmill. Yes?
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start it on Wednesday or Thursday. PSATs. Lovely, lovely PSATs. Thank you. Come again. You may talk quietly among yourselves until dismissal. Hold on.